How is Bugatti going to change the world of electric cars? Okay, so that sounds pretty unlikely, a bit like Gordon Ramsay starting a chain of vegan restaurants. But it could be about to happen with the help from a Croatian supercar maker called Rimac. In this video, I'm going to explain how Rimac could help Bugatti take on Tesla, and I'm going to show you exclusive pictures of what Bugatti's first EV could look like. Anyway, I'm Matt Watson, and you're watching Carwow.
Buying a new car? Then head to Carwow and my team will help you find your next car at a fair price. Carwow, your one-stop car buying comparison site.
You might not have heard of Rimac, but it's one of the most important players in the EV business. Oh, actually you might have heard of them because Richard Hammond famously crashed one of their cars. Anyhow, the company was started by a chap called Mate Rimac, who converted his classic BMW E30 into a record-breaking 600 horsepower electric car. Then he went on to make his own car in 2011, completely from scratch. I mean, this guy is a genius. It was called the Rimac Concept 1, and it was totally unique. It was an electric supercar. It had 4 motors and made more than 1,240 horsepower. This meant it could do 0 to 60 miles an hour in just 2.6 seconds. But this car wasn't perfect. It only had a range of 201 miles, which isn't that much really. But you forgive all of that if the Concept 1 cost as much as, say, a Porsche 911, you know, around £100,000. Well, it was actually going to cost more like £700,000. That could buy you 2 Lamborghini Aventadors, and given the choice between an Italian supercar and an electric car that costs twice as much, how many people are going to pick the EV? But someone saw a whole lot of potential in Rimac, and by someone I mean Porsche, and they bought 10% of the company's stock back in 2018. And this cash injection has helped Rimac become a supplier for some really big names. So far, Rimac has developed batteries for the Koenigsegg Regera, a hybrid system for the Aston Martin Valkyrie, and it even gave Jaguar a hand building an all-electric E-Type. But what has all this got to do with Bugatti? Well, it all goes back to Volkswagen and has ties to the Dieselgate scandal. Now, you remember Dieselgate, right? It was when some cars made by the Volkswagen Group were found to have secret driving modes that enabled them to cheat during emissions tests. This little trick cost Volkswagen more than £25 billion because it had to pay some massive fines. Since then, the Volkswagen Group has cleaned up its image, and it's now launching as many electric cars as it can. In the last couple of years, the Volkswagen Group has brought out the ID3 and the ID4, Skoda has launched the Enyaq, and Audi has revealed the e-tron, the Q4 e-tron and the e-tron GT. Even Porsche, which is also part of the same VW group, has launched 2 new electric cars, the Taycan and the Taycan Cross Turismo. And it's getting ready to reveal an electric Macan as well. Okay, so Lamborghini, which is also part of the Volkswagen group, hasn't made an electric car yet, but it has launched the Cyan, which is a hybrid, and it's going to build a new EV before 2030. So at least Lamborghini is making an effort. But do you know who hasn't built an electrified car yet? Bugatti, which is also part of the Volkswagen group. It's been far too busy hiding away at the back of the classroom building 300 miles an hour hypercars. And this doesn't look great, does it? Because owning a hypercar company whose big party piece is a 8-litre quad turbo isn't going to get you into the good books of the emission regulators now, is it? In fact, because of this, Volkswagen was actually thinking of selling Bugatti last year, but it wasn't going to offload the brand to some oil baron or some Saudi prince. Apparently, it was in talks to sell Bugatti to Rimac. Yeah, the same Rimac that builds parts for Bugatti's arch enemy, Koenigsegg. But Volkswagen never actually signed on the dotted line. Instead, Porsche handed over around £60 million to buy more shares in Rimac. Now it owns 24% of the company. But despite all of this, there's still the possibility that Bugatti and Rimac will work together on future projects. This would do wonders for Volkswagen's image, and it could mean that expensive Rimac tech could find its way into other VW Group cars in the future. But what sort of car would Rimac and Bugatti build together? Well, ever since it made the EB110 back in the 90s, Bugatti has always been focused on top speed records, and the new Chiron Supersport 300 Plus is the fastest production car ever made. It'll do more than 304 miles an hour. I actually had a go in that car and it's unbelievable. I'm going to stick a link just popping out in the top right hand corner of the screen. Click on that, you can watch the video. There's also a link in the description below. But even though that Bugatti is incredible, how relevant is it? You know, especially when there's only one racetrack in the world where you can actually do more than 300 miles an hour, and it happens to be owned by Volkswagen. And this is part of the reason why most hypercar makers start to back away from this VMAX p***ing contest. Even Koenigsegg has said that the new Jesko Absolute is the last car it will try to set a land speed record with. So how are all these hypercar brands going to measure their manhoods now? I reckon the next battleground will be acceleration times. So they'll be fighting over how fast their cars can go from 0 to 60 miles an hour. And this could play right into Rimac's hands, because electric cars are amazing at smashing 0 to 60 mile an hour records because their motors deliver instant torque at any speed.
Currently, Rimac's quickest car is called the Nevera. It has 4 electric motors that make 1,914 horsepower and an insane 2,360 newton meters of torque. It is the quickest accelerating production car in the world ever. And I know because I've timed it. In fact, I launched the car over the standing quarter mile and achieved a time of 8.6 seconds, which is just insane. And if you want to see that run, click on the pop-out band in the top right-hand corner of the screen to see me drag race a Nevera against a Ferrari SF90 Stradale.
Anyway, you can imagine what Rimac could do if it teamed up with Bugatti. After all, Bugatti was the first company to make a car that did 250 miles an hour, which was, of course, the Veyron. And then the Chiron Supersport 300 Plus was the first car to hit 300 miles an hour. So maybe it will try and be the first to do 0 to 60 miles an hour in under 1 second. Now, I don't know if that's possible. Obviously, it's going to be traction limited, and is the tyre tech up to it? We shall see. At the moment, the quickest Bugatti is the Chiron Sport. Now that'll do 0 to 60 miles an hour in a leisurely 2.3 seconds. But Bugatti has already built a concept car that's supposed to be even quicker. It's called the Bolide, which means fireball in Italian. I love that. It's a stripped out track car that looks like something Dominic Toretto would drive if he lived in the year 2099. It uses a 1,850 horsepower version of the Chiron's W16 engine, and Bugatti says it'll do 0 to 60 in less than 2.2 seconds. But re-engineering a Chiron to make a production version of the Bolide would have cost an absolute fortune. And that's a fortune by Bugatti standards. But maybe Bugatti could save itself a lot of hassle by ditching the old W16 and fitting 4 of Rimac's electric motors instead. So with all the battery technology and stuff like that, it might be a bit heavier, but with the 4 motors cranking out more than 2,000 horsepower, it could be even quicker. And because it wouldn't need all sorts of vents to cool a huge engine, an electric Bugatti could be even more aerodynamic. In fact, I reckon it could look something like this. I mean, how odd's that? Or Bugatti could go chasing lap records instead and give its car loads of downforce, which is easier to do if you don't have to find room for a huge engine. Bugatti said that the regular Bolide will be able to lap the Nürburgring in 5 minutes and 23 seconds. That's 80 seconds quicker than a Lamborghini Aventador SVJ, which is just nuts. But what do you think? Do you reckon Bugatti and Rimac have what it takes to make the world's quickest electric car? Or should Bugatti just stick to building massive 16-cylinder monsters? Let me know in the comments below.